The quantum blade still hummed with residual energy as Zira'keth dragged herself through the twisted metal of her ship's cockpit. Blue blood dripped from the gash across her secondary shoulder, leaving a trail through the smoke and sparks. Her adaptive scales flickered between gray and black, struggling to maintain camouflage while her body screamed in pain. The job had been perfect. Clean infiltration, silent elimination, flawless escape route. Admiral Krovax of the Consortium High Fleet had died before he even knew she was there. 847 targets over 30 years, and she had never missed. Never failed. Until Vextar sabotaged her jump drive. The rival assassin had planted the disruption charge weeks ago, waiting for the perfect moment. When Zira'keth engaged the hyperdrive, reality had torn apart around her ship like paper. The emergency systems barely got her out of the void before the entire drive core melted down. Now she was here, wherever here was, bleeding out in a crashed stealth ship on some forgotten rock at the edge of mapped space. Zira'keth forced her four arms to work together, pulling her body free from the wreckage. Her silver eyes adjusted to the dim light outside. The ship had plowed through what looked like an old landing platform, scattering debris across a courtyard. Buildings rose on all sides, their windows dark and empty. Human architecture she recognized. Standard colonial design from about 20 years ago. She stumbled forward 3 steps before her legs gave out. The impact with the ground sent fresh waves of agony through her cybernetic enhancements. Several were offline completely. Others sparked and misfired, sending random pulses through her nervous system. Her internal computer was still functional, barely. She activated her long-range scanner and immediately wished she hadn't. 48 hours. Maybe 50 if she was lucky. That's how long she had before the first bounty hunters arrived. Vextar would have sent her location to every mercenary, tracker, and killer in 3 sectors. The silent death, finally vulnerable. Finally killable. The bounty would be astronomical. Zira'keth laughed, the sound wet and painful. 30 years of perfect kills, and she would die in an abandoned human colony, alone and broken. She crawled toward the nearest building, leaving a smeared trail of blue blood behind her. The door was unlocked. Inside, dust covered everything. Chairs sat empty around tables. Screens hung dark on walls. The humans had left in a hurry, it seemed. Evacuation protocols, probably. Some crisis or economic collapse that made maintaining an outer rim research station pointless. The medical bay was 3 floors down. Zira'keth fell down 2 flights of stairs getting there, too weak to maintain balance. By the time she reached the medical equipment, her vision was tunneling. Her secondary heart had stopped beating. Her primary struggled to pump blood through damaged vessels. She managed to activate one of the auto-dock systems before collapsing onto the examination table. Robotic arms extended, sensors scanning her alien physiology with confused beeps and error messages. The system was designed for humans. It had no idea what to do with a Velthari assassin. Zira'keth felt consciousness slipping away like water through her fingers. This was it then. Not a blaze of glory. Not a final legendary fight. Just bleeding out on a medical table while a confused robot beeped at her. Footsteps. Her combat instincts flared despite her weakness. Someone was approaching through the corridor outside. Soft, measured steps. Single individual. Human gait pattern. Impossible. The scans showed the station was abandoned. She had checked. The door opened. A human male stood in the entrance, middle-aged, wearing a worn lab coat over simple clothing. His hair showed gray at the temples. His eyes were calm, the color of earth after rain. He looked at her without fear, without shock, just a quiet assessment of her injuries. "Easy now," he said, his voice soft and steady. "Let me help you." Zira'keth tried to activate her wrist blade, but nothing happened. Her cybernetics were completely offline. She attempted to speak, to threaten, to warn him away, but only managed a hissing sound through her damaged throat. The human approached slowly, hands visible, movements deliberate. He examined the autodoc's confused readings and made a small sound of understanding. "You're Velthari," he said, more to himself than to her. 4-chambered heart system, silicon-based blood chemistry, cybernetic integration at the neural level. He looked at her directly. "I'm Marcus. Dr. Marcus Webb. I know this equipment isn't designed for your biology, but I can make it work if you let me." She tried again to move, to escape, to do anything. Her body refused to cooperate. Marcus was already working, his fingers moving across the controls with practiced confidence. "I'm going to put you under for a few hours while I treat the worst of this. Your secondary heart has stopped, and you have significant internal bleeding. The cybernetic damage I'll have to address carefully. He paused, meeting her silver eyes. I know who you are. I watched the news feeds. The silent death. 847 confirmed eliminations. This was it. He would finish what Vextar started. Humans were practical creatures. Killing her now, while she was helpless, would earn him enough credits to buy a planet. But right now, Marcus continued, preparing an injection of something, you're just someone who needs help. And I'm the only doctor within 3-star systems who can provide it. Zira'keth felt the medication entering her system, felt her consciousness beginning to fade despite every instinct screaming at her to stay alert, to stay alive. This made no sense. Humans didn't help people like her. No one helped people like her. She was a weapon, a monster, a thing to be feared and used and eventually discarded. Why would he risk everything for someone like her? The question followed her down into darkness as Marcus's calm voice spoke somewhere above her, detached and professional, listing procedures and treatment protocols to the medical AI. Somewhere in the deepest part of her fading awareness, something else whispered. Something she hadn't felt in so long she had forgotten its name. Oh. Then there was nothing but the quiet dark, and the distant sound of steady work being done by careful hands. Zira'keth's eyes snapped open, every combat reflex firing at once. She was alive. That alone was suspicious. The medical bay was clean and quiet. Soft light filtered through panels overhead. Her body felt different, strange. Not painful exactly but altered. She ran a quick internal diagnostic and froze. Someone had repaired her cybernetics. Not just patched them but properly rebuilt the damaged connections. Her secondary heart was beating again, steady and strong. The gash across her shoulder had been sealed with surgical precision. Even her adaptive scales were responding normally, shifting through colors as her emotions changed. This level of work required expertise she hadn't expected to find anywhere, let alone on an abandoned research station. You're awake. Good. Zira'keth's head whipped toward the voice. Marcus stood near the monitoring station, checking readouts on a display. He looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had just completed difficult work successfully. She was off the table and across the room in one fluid motion, all 4 arms grabbing him and slamming him against the wall. Her wrist blade extended with a sharp click, the edge pressed against his throat. Marcus didn't struggle. Didn't even seem particularly afraid. He just looked at her with those calm earth-colored eyes and waited. Why? Zira'keth's voice was rough but functional. Why help me? Because you needed help, Marcus said simply. I am the silent death. I have killed hundreds. My hands are covered in blood from a dozen species. She pressed the blade closer. I am the thing parents used to frighten their children. Why would you save something like me? Because even the silent death deserves medical treatment when she's injured. Marcus's voice remained steady, conversational. Your secondary heart had completely stopped. The cybernetic damage was causing system-wide failures. If I hadn't operated, you would have died in about 6 hours. So you know what I am and you helped me anyway. Zira'keth searched his face for deception, for hidden motives. What do you want in return? Nothing. She laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Everyone wants something. Credits. Protection. Leverage. What is your price, human? I don't have one. Marcus shifted slightly, not trying to escape but making himself more comfortable against the wall. You crashed here badly injured. I'm a doctor. It's actually quite simple when you think about it. Zira'keth pulled back slightly, confused. 30 years of contracts, of deals, of everything having a price, and this human claimed to want nothing. It made no tactical sense. I could kill you right now, she said. You could, Marcus agreed. But I don't think you will. Why not? Because if you wanted me dead, I would already be dead. You're the galaxy's most efficient killer after all. He smiled slightly. You're threatening me because you're confused, not because you're planning to follow through. She released him abruptly, stepping back. He was right, which made her even more unsettled. Her instincts were screaming at her, warning her that this situation was wrong, that kindness was always a trap, that trust meant death. Marcus straightened his lab coat, unbothered by the encounter. Your ship is badly damaged. The jump drive is completely destroyed, and the hull integrity is compromised in multiple sections. I've been running repair calculations, but you're looking at least 2 weeks before it's spaceworthy again. Probably 3. I don't have 3 weeks. Zira'keth moved to the window, scanning the empty colony beyond. They'll be here in less than 2 days now. They? Bounty hunters. Assassins. Everyone who wants to claim they killed the silent death. Her scales flickered dark gray, the color of resignation. Someone sabotaged my escape. They know I'm vulnerable. They're coming. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then you'll need somewhere to recover and prepare. The station has defensive systems, old but functional. Living quarters on the 3rd level are still habitable. Medical supplies are adequate. He met her eyes. You can stay here until you're ready to face them. Why would you offer me sanctuary? Zira'keth turned to face him fully. I'm bringing death to your doorstep. My doorstep has been pretty quiet for 5 years, Marcus said with a slight shrug. A little excitement might be interesting. Besides, you'll need someone to monitor your cybernetics while they finish integrating. I can do that. She stared at him, trying to understand. Humans were supposed to be predictable, fearful of things stronger than them, motivated by survival and self-interest. This one made no sense. I could be lying, she said. About everything. The bounty hunters might not come. I might just be waiting until I'm strong enough to kill you and take whatever I want from this station. You could be, Marcus acknowledged. But you're not. Your physiological responses during our conversation show confusion and suspicion, but not deception. Your heart rate spikes when you're unsure, not when you're lying. He smiled. Xenobiology is my specialty. I can read you better than you might think. Zira'keth felt something unfamiliar twist in her chest. Not anger. Not fear. Something else entirely. Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. 3rd floor, East Wing. The quarters are clean and the security locks work from the inside. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry. I'll be in my lab if you need anything. He looked back at her. You're safe here, Zira'keth. For as long as you need. He knew her name. Of course he did. Everyone knew her name. But the way he said it, it didn't sound like a title or a curse. It sounded like he was talking to a person. She stood alone in the medical bay for a long time after he left, processing the encounter. Finally, she moved through the station to the quarters he had mentioned. They were exactly as described. Clean. Functional. The lock worked perfectly. She locked the door and spent the next hour planting surveillance devices throughout the station. If Marcus had ulterior motives, she would find them. If he was planning betrayal, she would see it coming. That night, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion, she watched him through the hidden cameras. Marcus was in his laboratory, surrounded by displays showing scans and data. Her scans and data, she realized. He was studying her biology with intense concentration, making notes, cross-referencing information. But there was no calculation in his expression. No scheming. Just genuine fascination, the look of someone solving an interesting puzzle. He manipulated a holographic image of her cardiovascular system, highlighting where he had made repairs, checking his work with careful precision. Then he smiled. Not a predatory smile. Not a smile of triumph or greed. Just a smile. Like he was pleased with himself for helping someone. Zira'keth watched until he finally shut down his systems and headed to his own quarters. She watched the empty lab for another hour, trying to understand what she had just witnessed. Somewhere in the darkness of the abandoned research station, the galaxy's most wanted assassin felt something crack inside her chest. It felt like the first piece of a wall beginning to crumble. 3 days passed in a rhythm Zira'keth had never experienced before. Each morning Marcus left a meal outside her door. Never entering without permission. Never demanding her presence. Just food, carefully prepared and suitable for her biology, waiting on a small tray with a handwritten note. Good morning, or hope you slept well, or simply enjoy. She ate alone at first, analyzing each meal for toxins or sedatives. Found nothing. Just food. On the second day she found medical updates printed and left with breakfast. Her cybernetic integration rates. Healing progress. Recommendations for physical therapy. All presented clearly, respectfully, as if she had the right to know what was happening inside her own body. No one had ever done that before. By the 3rd day, Zira'keth found herself watching Marcus through her surveillance more than seemed tactically necessary. He followed the same routine each day. Morning in the lab reviewing research. Afternoon maintaining the station's systems. Evening in the garden dome, tending to plants that somehow still grew in the hydroponics bay. He talked to the plants, told them about his day, asked how they were doing. It was absurd. It was inefficient. It was completely illogical. She couldn't stop watching. That evening she found Marcus in the shared kitchen, cooking something that smelled surprisingly good. He looked up when she entered, not startled, just acknowledging her presence. I was hoping you might join me, he said, gesturing to the second plate he had already prepared. But I understand if you'd prefer to eat separately. Zira'keth stood in the doorway, Every instinct screaming warnings. Shared meals meant vulnerability. Meant letting her guard down. Meant trust. She sat down anyway, keeping her back to the wall and her eyes on the exits. Marcus served the food without comment, then sat across from her. They ate in silence for several minutes. Not uncomfortable silence exactly. Just quiet. "May I ask you something?" Marcus said finally. She tensed immediately. "What?" "Your scales. They change color based on your emotional state, correct?" He kept his tone casual, curious. "I've noticed patterns over the past few days. Dark gray when you're cautious. Black when you're tense. But sometimes they show blue just briefly." What does blue mean? No one had ever asked about her scales before. They just knew what the dangerous colors meant and stayed away. Blue is. She paused, unsure how to explain. Confusion. Uncertainty. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "You've been blue quite often since arriving here. Your behavior is confusing." "How so?" Zira'keth set down her utensil, meeting his eyes. "You know what I am. What I've done. Yet you treat me like I'm a guest instead of a threat. You ask permission to enter rooms I'm in. You thank me when I accept medical monitoring. You leave notes with breakfast." Her scales flickered between gray and blue. "I don't understand your strategy." "There is no strategy," Marcus said gently. "I'm just treating you the way I would want to be treated. With respect. With basic human decency." "I'm not human." "No, but you're still a person." He took a sip of water. "You think, you feel, you make choices. That makes you a person in my book, regardless of your species or your past." The words hit something deep inside her chest. Something that hurt in a way injuries never did. "Why did you stay here?" she asked, changing the subject before that hurt could grow. "When the colony evacuated." "Why remain alone?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression distant. "My wife, Catherine, was the lead xenobiologist here. She studied alien diseases, trying to develop universal treatments. 3 years into our assignment, she contracted something from a sample. Something we couldn't identify fast enough to cure. She died." "Yes." Marcus's voice was soft but steady. "The colony offered to send her body back to Earth for burial. Offered me a transfer, counseling, everything. But her research was here. Her life's work. I couldn't just leave it unfinished. So I stayed. Continued her studies. Tried to make sense of what she died trying to understand." Zira'keth understood loss, though she had never experienced it personally. She understood dedication to a purpose. But this kind of grief, this kind of loyalty to someone no longer alive, was foreign to her. "Do you regret staying?" she asked. "Sometimes," Marcus admitted. "It's lonely. But her work has led to treatments that have saved lives across multiple species. So no, I don't regret it. I just wish she could have seen the results." They sat in silence again, but it felt different this time. Like the quiet had meaning. "I don't remember my first kill," Zira'keth heard herself say. "I was young when the syndicate took me. They trained me, modified me, turned me into a weapon. By the time I was old enough to question it, I had already killed so many that stopping seemed pointless." Her scales shifted to deep blue. "I don't know how to be anything else." "You don't have to figure it out all at once," Marcus said. "Being here, eating dinner, having a conversation. That's something else. That's a start." Zira'keth looked at this strange, kind human who had saved her life and asked nothing in return. Who spoke to her like she mattered beyond her ability to kill. Who smiled at plants and left notes with breakfast and genuinely seemed to believe she could be more than her worst moments. For the first time in 30 years, she wondered if he might be right. The moment shattered as alarms blared through the station. Marcus was on his feet instantly, moving to a wall panel. His fingers flew across the controls, pulling up sensor data. His expression remained calm but focused. "Proximity alert," he said. 8 ships entering orbit. They're not broadcasting identification codes." Zira'keth was beside him in a heartbeat, reading the displays. She recognized the ship signatures. Bounty hunters. Various species, various syndicates. All here for the same prize. "You need to leave," she said flatly. "Take an escape pod. Get as far from here as possible. When they arrive, I have an idea," Marcus interrupted. "If you'll trust me." She stared at him. "What?" "This station has experimental defense systems. Catherine and I used to joke that the Research Council was paranoid, installing military-grade protection on a science outpost. He brought up a new set of controls showing weapons arrays, shield generators, sensor jammers. They're old, but I've maintained them. If we work together, we might be able to hold them off." You want to fight 8 ships of trained killers? Marcus looked at her with that same calm expression he always wore. I want to defend my home. And right now you're part of that home. So yes. Zira'keth felt her scales shift to a color she hadn't seen in years. Bright silver. The color of hope. Tell me what you need me to do, she said. Marcus smiled. Let's show them why attacking a research station was a very bad idea. The command center hummed to life as Marcus activated systems that hadn't been used in years. Displays lit up across the walls, showing orbital positions, weapon status, and shield integrity. Zira'keth moved to the tactical station, her 4 arms flying across multiple control panels simultaneously. Shield generators are at 70% capacity, Marcus reported, his voice steady and professional. Weapon systems are warming up. We have 4 plasma turrets, 2 missile batteries, and an electromagnetic pulse array. Zira'keth pulled up the enemy formation on her display. 8 ships, arranged in a standard hunter pattern. They were holding position just outside weapons range, scanning the station. They're confused, she said. They expected a derelict facility. Instead they're reading active defenses and power signatures. Her scales flickered between gray and silver. They'll probe our defenses first. Test our response time and capabilities before committing to a full assault. Then we make that test costly, Marcus said. He transferred targeting data to her station. I'll handle shields and sensors. You coordinate the weapons. Your combat experience is far better than mine. She glanced at him, surprised. Most beings would want control during a crisis. But Marcus was already focused on his own tasks, trusting her completely with the offensive systems. The first ship broke formation, accelerating toward the station. A small fighter, fast and maneuverable. Probably meant to draw their fire while the others analyzed their response. Targeting, Zira'keth said, her fingers moving with practiced precision. Plasma turret 3 has the best angle. Fire when ready, Marcus responded, adjusting shield distribution to reinforce their position. The turret spat blue energy across the darkness. The fighter's pilot was skilled, weaving through the initial barrage. But Zira'keth had been predicting movements and calculating trajectories for 3 decades. Her 4th shot clipped the fighter's engine, sending it spinning away, trailing debris. Direct hit, Marcus confirmed. Shields holding at 68%. They're regrouping. 3 more ships accelerated forward, attacking from different vectors. Zira'keth's mind shifted into combat mode, analyzing angles and timing. She fired the missile battery at the leftmost ship while targeting the rightmost with plasma turrets. Central ship is charging weapons, Marcus warned. Looks like a heavy plasma cannon. Impact in 12 seconds. Divert power to forward shields, Zira'keth ordered. Marcus's hands moved without hesitation, following her command instantly. The forward shields flared bright as the enemy plasma struck, holding but straining under the impact. Shields at 42%, Marcus said. But the other 2 ships are in range now. Zira'keth launched countermeasures, filling the space around the station with reflective chaff. 2 of the incoming missiles exploded prematurely. She targeted the central ship's weapon array with both turrets, walking fire across its hull until something exploded internally. Nice shot, Marcus said, and she could hear the slight smile in his voice. They fell into a rhythm. Marcus anticipated her needs, routing power where she needed it, keeping shields balanced, feeding her targeting data. She protected his position, eliminating threats before they could overwhelm his defenses. They moved together like they had trained for years instead of minutes. The remaining 5 ships changed tactics, spreading out and attacking from multiple angles simultaneously. Zira'keth divided her attention between targets, prioritizing threats by weapon charge times and approach vectors. 2 ships breaking off, Marcus reported. They're trying to flank us from above and below the orbital plane. I see them. Zira'keth activated the EMP array, sending a pulse toward the upper ship. Its systems flickered and died, leaving it drifting. 1 down. I need 30 seconds to recharge the array for the lower ship. I can buy you 30 seconds, Marcus said. The 3 frontal ships intensified their assault. Marcus juggled shield distribution like an artist, keeping them alive through precision timing and calculated risks. Zira'keth eliminated another ship, its reactor going critical and taking out a second ship that had moved too close. 20 seconds. The lower flanking ship was charging its main weapon, targeting the command center directly. If that shot connected, shields wouldn't matter. 10 seconds. Marcus, you need to evacuate this position, Zira'keth said urgently. Get to the secondary control room. Now. Not until the array is charged, he replied calmly. 8 seconds. Marcus. 5 seconds. The enemy ship fired. A massive energy beam lanced toward the command center. Marcus slammed controls, routing every bit of power he could into the forward shields. The beam struck like a hammer. Zira'keth fired the EMP array at the flanking ship, watching it go dead. Then she turned and saw Marcus. He was on the ground, unconscious. The shield controls had overloaded, sending feedback through his station. Burn marks scarred the console where his hands had been. Smoke rose from damaged circuits. Something broke inside Zira'keth's chest. Fear. Real fear. Not for herself but for someone else. The emotion was so foreign, so overwhelming, that her scales flashed through a dozen colors in rapid succession before settling on bright red. The color of fury. 2 ships remained. Both were damaged, both were cautious. They didn't know the command center had been compromised. They didn't know Marcus was down. They didn't know what they had just done. Zira'keth stood, her 4 arms moving across controls with speed that made them blur. She didn't care about shield management anymore. Didn't care about tactical caution. She routed every bit of available power to weapons and fired everything. Plasma turrets, missile batteries, even the station's emergency thrusters. Anything that could hurt them, anything that could make them pay for what they had done. The first ship tried to evade, but she predicted its movements 3 steps ahead. Missiles struck its engines while plasma burned through its hull. It exploded in brilliant white light. The last ship attempted to flee. Zira'keth locked all remaining weapons on its drive signature and fired. The concentrated barrage overwhelmed its shields, tore through its armor and cracked its reactor. The ship came apart in pieces, scattering across orbit like dying stars. Then silence. Zira'keth was across the room in a heartbeat, kneeling beside Marcus. Her hands shook as she checked his pulse, his breathing. Both were present but weak. The burns on his hands looked painful but not fatal. Electrical shock, she diagnosed. Temporary unconsciousness. He would live. She sat back, her entire body trembling with an emotion she couldn't name. Relief. Fear. Something else entirely. Her scales had turned soft blue, the color of deep confusion. For 30 years she had existed as a weapon. Emotionless. Efficient. Alone. Marcus had shown her kindness. Had offered her shelter without conditions. Had trusted her. Had protected her position even when it meant risking himself. And now, kneeling in a damaged command center surrounded by the debris of destroyed ships, Zira'keth realized something that terrified her more than any bounty hunter ever could. She cared whether he lived or died. She cared about Marcus Webb. The galaxy's most wanted assassin stared at the unconscious human and felt tears form in her silver eyes for the first time she could remember. "Don't you dare die on me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please." Zira'keth didn't leave the medical bay for 3 days. She sat beside Marcus's bed, monitoring every vital sign, every fluctuation in his readings. The autodoc had stabilized him within hours, but he remained unconscious. His body was healing from the electrical shock, the burns, the trauma. His brain activity showed normal patterns. He just needed time. Time that Zira'keth spent reading every medical journal in the station's database, cross-referencing human physiology with treatments she knew from other species. She adjusted his medication twice, catching potential complications before they developed. She changed his bandages with a precision usually reserved for dismantling security systems. She refused to let him die. On the morning of the 4th day, Marcus's eyes opened. "Hey," he said, his voice rough and weak. "Did we win?" Zira'keth's scales flashed bright silver before she could control them. "You're awake." "Apparently." He tried to sit up and winced. She was there immediately, adjusting the bed angle instead, arranging pillows behind him with her 4 arms working in careful coordination. "You were unconscious for 73 hours, she said, her voice tight. The electrical feedback from the shield console caused significant trauma. You had 2nd-degree burns on both hands and temporary cardiac arrhythmia. I've been monitoring." "Zira'keth," Marcus interrupted gently. "I'm okay." She stopped talking, her hands frozen in mid-adjustment. Then, to her absolute horror, she felt tears forming again. She turned away quickly, her scales shifting to dark gray. "You almost died protecting me," she said. "That was tactically unsound. Emotionally irrational. Completely unnecessary." "But I didn't die," Marcus pointed out. "Thanks to you, I'm guessing. The medical logs show treatment protocols I didn't program into the system. I improvised." She kept her back to him, struggling to compose herself. "Your human medical database is inadequate. I applied techniques from Velthari combat medicine and Kryn neurological treatments. You saved my life. You saved mine first. Zira'keth finally turned to face him. Multiple times. This was simply returning the favor. Marcus studied her with those calm eyes that seemed to see everything. That's not why you did it though, is it? She wanted to lie. Wanted to maintain the professional distance, the emotional walls that had kept her safe for 3 decades. But sitting here, looking at this human who had shown her kindness without reason, she found she couldn't. No, she admitted quietly. I did it because the thought of you dying terrified me. I've faced armies. I've stood before crime lords and corporate executives and military commanders who wanted me dead. None of them frightened me. But watching you fall, watching you hurt because you were protecting me? Her scales shifted to deep blue. I didn't know I could still feel fear like that. Fear for someone else, Marcus said. Yes. That's called carrying Zira'keth. It means you're not just a weapon. You're a person. The words broke something inside her. She sat down heavily in the chair beside his bed, all 4 arms wrapped around herself. I don't know how to be a person, she whispered. I was taken as a child. Modified. Trained. By the time I had my own thoughts, I had already killed. The syndicate owned me completely. When I finally broke free, I kept doing the only thing I knew how to do. Killing became easier than trying to be anything else. Marcus reached out with one bandaged hand, stopping just short of touching her. Asking permission. She extended one of her hands and he took it gently. My life has been hollow, she continued. Empty. I complete contracts, I collect payment, I move to the next target. I've accumulated enough credits to buy a fleet of ships, but I own nothing except weapons. I've traveled to hundreds of worlds, but I have no home. I've met thousands of beings, but until I crashed here, I don't think anyone had ever looked at me and seen past the weapon to whatever might exist underneath. I see you, Marcus said simply. I see someone intelligent, capable, and trying to figure out who she wants to be. That's enough. They sat in silence for a while, his hand warm around hers. What happens now? Zira'keth asked finally. The bounty hunters are destroyed, but more will come. My former employers have marked me as unreliable. I can't return to that life. But I don't know what other life exists for someone like me. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said, I have a proposal. A completely insane, probably impossible proposal. Tell me. Stay here. Work with me. He gestured around the medical bay with his free hand. You have 3 decades of experience with alien biology, combat medicine, cybernetic systems. You modified medical protocols in 3 days that took me months to develop. Imagine what we could do together. Real research. Real treatments. Using your knowledge to heal instead of harm. Zira'keth stared at him, her scales cycling through colors so fast they became a blur. You want me to be a researcher? I want you to be whatever you choose to be, Marcus corrected. But yes, I think you'd be brilliant at it. And selfishly, I could use the help. Catherine's work is enormous and I'm only one person. Having a partner again? He smiled slightly. That would be good. I don't have credentials. No formal training. I'm wanted by half the organizations in the galaxy. We're on the edge of mapped space. No one comes here except people crashing or people trying to kill you. We have time to build something new. To become something new. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. What do you think? Terror and hope warred inside Zira'keth's chest. The idea was absurd. Impossible. She was an assassin, not a scientist. She dealt in death, not life. How could she possibly? But Marcus was looking at her like he genuinely believed she could do this. Like he saw potential in her that she had never seen in herself. I'm scared, she admitted. That's okay. I'm a little scared too. Marcus smiled. But we'll figure it out together. That's what partners do. Zira'keth thought about the past week. About waking up to breakfast notes. About conversations over dinner. About fighting side by side, trusting each other completely. About the way Marcus spoke to her like she mattered, like she was more than her worst moments. She thought about 30 years of emptiness and the first genuine connection she had felt in her entire life. Yes, she said, her scales turning bright silver. I'll stay. I'll try. That's all anyone can do, Marcus said. 6 months later, Zira'keth stood in the laboratory, analyzing data on a display. Her 4 arms moved between 3 different workstations simultaneously, cross-referencing research with practiced efficiency. Behind her, Marcus reviewed her latest findings on cross-species pain management protocols. This is remarkable, he said, excitement clear in his voice. If these results hold up, We could revolutionize treatment for crin nerve damage. The principle should work for any silicon-based biology, Zira'keth replied, making adjustments to the molecular model. Though we'll need to run simulations for, she paused, noticing something in the data. Marcus, look at this. The compound interaction here mirrors Catherine's work on cellular regeneration. Marcus came to stand beside her, examining the display. You're right. If we combine your approach with her research. He trailed off, already running calculations. They worked in comfortable silence for hours, the way they had every day for the past 6 months. Zira'keth's surveillance equipment had been dismantled weeks ago. She didn't need it anymore. She trusted Marcus completely. When they finally broke for dinner, Marcus raised his glass of water. To unexpected partnerships. Zira'keth raised her own glass, her scales glowing soft silver. For the first time she could remember, she smiled. Genuinely smiled. To new beginnings, she said. They touched glasses gently, and in that simple gesture, the galaxy's most wanted assassin found something she never thought possible. She found home.